Hi, how's it going? So, today we're going to talk about something very not dear to me, but something very, I don't know, one of those existential questions that you find yourself asking yourself a lot of times. So, I'm going to talk to you about a 9 to 5 versus being an entrepreneur. So, I know everyone and his mother is probably going to try to sell you a course on how to become successful in this industry, how to quit your 9 to 5. 9 to 5 is a scam, da 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 da. And then, while at the same time, we all know most of them are charlatans selling you their courses or selling you a book or making you buy their crypto, whatever it is they're trying to sell into you. But then at the same time, it is undeniable that most of the innovations that we find ourselves having, the reason why my standard of living is just a regular Joe Schmo in the 21st century is way, way, way higher than like the King of Kings way back in like 400 years ago. For example, I have access to better resources, health, money, like everything. Like, even though I'm just a nobody amongst a bunch of nobodies, you know what I mean? So, and those innovations are due to certain steps that were taken forth by entrepreneurs and creatives and building teams, etc., etc. So we do realize that though we do need entrepreneurs and people of that caliber in our society to enable us to shoot for the moon and etc., etc. Now, the reason why I'm making this particular video is to try to think about why you should consider entrepreneurship and why you shouldn't, why you should consider a 9 to 5, why you shouldn't, and why you can also consider both. And you have to realize, usually when someone is working or is an entrepreneur, it's not as glamorous. It's not as glamorous as people set it out to be most of the time. So one way to think about it is this: when you work a simple 9 to 5, you kind of have structure and work-life balance. I mean, some might argue you have work-work balance or life-life balance. It's just semantics. You have your job and then you live it and then hopefully forget about it until the next day. That gives you some freedoms and certain burdens. That means that you're not entirely in charge of the expectation of your life. For example, you can will your way out of a recession. If a recession hits the company that you're working for, you might get canned. Sometimes, despite how hard you try, you may not get the promotion that you think you deserve because maybe your manager doesn't recognize it or maybe sees something else in someone else that might not be a skill that you can develop. So necessarily, whatever it is that you try to accomplish would always be not necessarily limited, but within a certain realm of like what someone else deems worthy and deems possible. But then at the same time, like I said, you have a lot of freedoms. That means that once your in and out time is done, then you get time to do the rest of your life or the rest of yourself. And if you're not on the clock, then you can be the best of yourself and like just throw yourself in other things. Because one thing most people don't seem to realize, beyond money, career goals, and ambition, like life is still life outside that. Like, you still gotta do life stuff. If that's playing video games for you, cool. If that's you hanging with your family, cool. If that's you going to the gym, cool. If that's you seeing the world, cool. If that's you, whatever it is, it might be, you still have life outside that. And like the careers and jobs we choose, sometimes you gotta realize you're just trying to pay the bill. I mean, that's it. However, at the same time, you gotta realize too that when you delve into like or fully commit into like the 9 to 5 lifestyle, unfortunately, because that's something you end up doing more than the rest of your life, because you are committed at least 8 hours or like 7 hours of your day to that, depending on the job you work. And then some people work more hours, some people work less, obviously. But fundamentally, that becomes your identity. And at times, people can find themselves in existentialist situations whereby they have committed to something for so long, but they never believed in it. It wasn't that inspiration on whatever, but then it's kind of tied to their identity. And I think that usually happens in situations where someone doesn't have a life outside work and work becomes everything for them. The problem with that is that you end up finding meaning and seeking meaning within work, and sometimes that can be disappointing, hence devastating to an individual. But then on the flip side, if you're really good at that and delve into it, you're probably most likely to get rewarded more than the average individual. You get better promotions, get better pay, get better in your industry, which may be useful if you leverage it for like resources and like uh opportunities like work from home and like be able to like be a digital nomad and da all those things. But then fundamentally that never happens, because like the harder you work, sometimes the more it seems like you need to be working so you can really leverage the it's complicated, let me just put it that way. But now let's talk about entrepreneurship. The problem is it has been very glamorized in our society, and I get it, because fundamentally the most successful, innovative, and productive countries tend to be very capitalistic. I mean, not fully capitalist, because you still need some social issues or like some social stuff in different situations, etc. But one thing that has always kind of baffled me is, how do we as individuals tap into the entrepreneurship side of ourselves without over exploiting ourselves? Because the thing is, two things end up happening. People try to become entrepreneurs to escape being slave to capitalism, but then end up being bigger slaves to capitalism. And if they get rewarded, then they get to be the top dogs in the capitalist game. If they don't get rewarded, then it gets to be very devastating, because even though we all have equal opportunities, etc., but you gotta realize we also exist in a hybrid capitalist society. Some people call it chronic capitalism, and it's not as straightforward as it is. And like, even in terms of equality and equity, where you start is not always the same. I'm not trying to tell someone not to pursue their dreams, not to be entrepreneur, not to be this, but I'm just trying to shine the light to the fact that you're closer to being homeless on the street than you are to being Jeff Bezos, for example. That's a harsh reality most people don't want to admit, because I feel like we need to believe that. And I feel like, yeah, that's good, but as long as we kind of like balance that self-belief with some self-awareness, because at the end of the day, that's what makes people very susceptible to being scammed, to being convinced that this will make them rich quickly, they will escape the metrics, etc., etc. I feel like it is necessary for people to think that way. But I feel like the way we should think of ourselves as becoming entrepreneurs in a capitalist or socialist society, for all we care, is trying to provide value. I know that sounds very kumbaya, halala, but I feel like if fundamentally you recognize that the game of capitalism is you providing value, and if the thing you're providing value to is valuable enough for other people, then they will follow you till the ends of earth, for example. But then once we stop thinking of it as like quick money, whatever, I mean, and then it makes people less likely to be scammed, but also you get to be a better individual. Look, I'm not saying just because you work a 9 to 5, then you chill, you just wait, you just cruise. At the same time, unfortunately, you still gotta have some entrepreneur-esque attributes to you. Some people may refer to this phenomenon as entrepreneurship. Usually you're an entrepreneur within the organization you're working for. I mean, a lot of people might argue, oh, it's just a job, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it is just a job, but at the end of the day, there's a certain time that you're committed to that job, and if you can be the best version of yourself within that time that you are getting paid for, then you can leverage that to better positions, better pay, better equity within that company that you're working for. And if that company doesn't recognize your value, guess what? You have been skilled enough and been learning and good enough that when you jump ship, you're not a liability to someone that hires you next. You get what I'm saying? It's like you give people an opportunity to treat you how you're worth, and that means that if they don't do so, if you're worth enough, you have the leverage to escape, you know. So I feel like, simply put, if you're cut out for it, go for it. We need that. That's why I got, we need that. At the same time, if you're not cut out for it, you're not missing out on anything. Just make sure like the rest of your life is fulfilling, and don't make job like the career you work your identity. It's a paycheck. But then at the same time, don't just stay that way, because then it makes you are gonna end up becoming replaceable in places like recessions and stuff like that. So within that context, develop yourself to be better in that role and grow with it, while recognizing that it doesn't necessarily make you a better human being if you're better at your job, but it just gives you an opportunity to have more resources and leverage to live your life better, spend more in your life, and do the things that you actually do want to do. And also, if you feel like you can risk it and become an entrepreneur in the companies you're working for. You see, not all of you motherfuckers are gonna be sorry. Not every person is gonna be the number one guy that invents Google, whatever, and then becomes a multi-billionaire. There's a lot of number 30s, number 40s, number 60s that are successful and living a very nice life. Maybe that's sometimes you're gonna be a very successful number 40. Yeah. So I hope this was helpful. If it was not, please let me know. Let's discuss it. What am I missing? What do you think? How, what are you coming from, like red pill, black pill, or blue pill, whatever it is, it might be. Let's just try to have a discussion and see like how can we as individuals be better in our lives without just subscribing to like entrepreneurship versus 9 to 5 and then that's it, but trying to realize the economy and the world that we live in is also different. It's not like back in the day where I could work at the same place forever till I retire too, but also how do I actually become a better version of myself, do the things that I want to do. We'll have all those discussions. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. If you didn't, let me know. I can improve on it. Like, comment, share, subscribe, whatever it is it might be, and hopefully you will get to hear more and more of this. And yeah,